Good morning, everybody. My name's Neil Armstrong. I'm from Tribepad. I'm going to try something a little bit different this morning. I'm actually going to share some wisdom from some conversations I've had with 20-odd industry experts. I'm lucky enough to host a podcast for Tribepad, which my kids tell me is really cringe, because, Dad, you're really boring, so why would anybody want to talk to you? I was like, thanks, son. Anyway, hopefully you'll find it a little bit more interesting. I don't think he's my audience, because I wasn't talking about Call of Duty. Anyway, so my hope from this is you're going to go away with some nuggets about talent attraction from some people who do it day in, day out and really know their stuff. If you don't know who Tribepad are, we're a talent acquisition platform. Our mission is to make recruitment fairer, faster and better because the right job can be life-changing. Talent acquisition platform, what does that mean? Applicant tracking system, candidate relationship management, and then an ecosystem of the best attraction, assessment and compliance tools around. That'll do, that's all the spiel about Tribepad. So let me tell you a little bit about the View podcast. We've actually just recorded our 20th episode, been doing it for a couple of years, and the theme is about bringing recruitment, people and purpose together. So it's really aimed at talent acquisition leaders and aspiring leaders, and really my job is just to ask questions of the experts, and they do 90% of the talking. So my job's actually pretty easy. Talent attraction is right up there. It's almost everybody's number one topic, number one pain point. And I've spoken to a real range of organisations from the NHS to Card Factory to BT, Channel 4 and Indeed. All organisations you've heard of, all of whom have great brand presence and therefore get loads of applications, and talent attraction isn't usually a problem. But they've all worked in smaller organisations, and actually many of the companies who I've spoken to, many of the people I've spoken to, work in those organisations where their brand is less well known, and therefore they really have to fight to attract the talent that they need. So I'm going to share 4 key themes that have come up in these different conversations. Let's see how we get on. So the first one, and interesting in terms of the pie chart that Mark just showed of your votes in terms of attracting candidates from diverse backgrounds. The first area I'm going to look at is DEI. So despite what Trump says, DEI is still an absolute priority. It's not just a moral imperative, it's an absolute business essential must do. We know, we've all seen the statistics about how diverse teams drive better culture, better revenue, better profit, better retention, better inclusion. And you will know that right now, candidates are already asking questions in the interview process. They're already challenging what sort of company culture you have. What are your inclusivity policies? What is the reality that's being shared on Glassdoor and elsewhere? And with the demographic changes that are coming over the next couple of decades, where we've got Gen Alpha, Gen Z coming into the workforce, again, these aren't nice to have policies to tick boxes. These are absolutely critical values that should be embedded in every company culture, and it's going to be essential, and I'm sure already is essential for you in attracting the sort of talent you need to make sure your organisation represents your customer base. If you're in the public sector, represents the communities you serve. So it's absolutely critical. So I guess perhaps something to touch on in the round tables. I'm not sure anybody's going to put their hand up and shout out right now that they'd be brave enough to say, yeah, our process is really biased and it's the hiring manager's fault, it's the recruiter's fault, it's the tech, it's the process, it's the leadership. We know there are challenges throughout the organisation that all have to line up to make this better. Inclusion isn't about being an expert, it's about being human. So Zaid Al-Qassar was the first person who I spoke to. Now, you might not have heard of him, he's not a big figure in the recruitment industry, but he was the Chief Marketing Officer of BT, pretty big job. Then he was the Chief Marketing Officer of Channel 4, pretty big job. He was also the DEI lead at Channel 4. If you watch the telly, you'll know what a positively inclusive organisation Channel 4 is in terms of what's on the screen, what's in their workforce. They're authentic and transparent front to back and right at the front of the industry. He's now actually CEO of M&C Saatchi, which is one of the largest advertising groups on the planet. So this guy knows how to build culture. For him, the key takeaway I got from the conversation with him was, inclusion is all about making sure that people feel seen and they feel heard, and that when they contribute, the business grows. So one of the things that he put in place at Channel 4 was employee resource groups, hopefully something that many of you in the room are involved with. And it's all about making sure that concerns can be voiced, policies can be challenged, new initiatives can be introduced. And by having that transparency and authenticity in the culture itself, that naturally translates into your EVP, that naturally translates into your talent attraction program, where your candidates feel that what you're saying and what they're seeing and what they're experiencing in the recruitment process really does reflect reality inside the company culture. And I think that's absolutely critical. If you design benefits with people, not just for them, you solve problems that pay alone can't fix. So Paul Lundbeck, again, you might not have heard of HCRG, but they're actually quite a large care organisation. They've got about 6,000 staff. They deliver critical nursing services all across the UK. Nursing's an incredibly competitive industry in terms of finding the talent. Pay is often low, and therefore attracting talent can be down to some really fine margins about why would you work for this organisation, not that organisation? Why would you leave the NHS to come to work for this organisation? And so getting across how important sort of culture, flexibility and benefits is a really important part of the talent attraction strategy. Paul put in place something called the Innovation Fund. And the idea of this is about £100,000 that they put into internal employee-driven projects to drive initiatives that can make a difference to the culture. So these aren't, not top-down things. It's very much bottom-up ideas that come from the culture. And that's led to some things like a change in menopause packages to support clinical staff and address real issues. And that internal action and that internal buy-in, again, translates into something real and authentic that can be used in the talent attraction process. And it's working really, really well for them. Paul shared some statistics with me recently about their retention rates, their attraction rates, their time to hire. And across the board, it's better than their peers and considerably better than the NHS. So again, just small differences that really involve your employees make a huge difference. So I guess concluding on the DEI side of things is my background's marketing. And anybody sort of did marketing or business studies, A-level, GCSE or anything? There's something called low involvement purchase and high involvement purchase, right? So a low involvement purchase is a packet of crisps. You don't really care about it. You just go in, recognise the brand, you buy it. High involvement purchase, buying a car. Well, finding a job is a pretty high involvement purchase, and therefore trust is right at the centre of that decision. Am I coming into a culture that is really committed to DEI, or is there a bunch of rainbow washing going on here? Real inclusion and real transparency in the organisation is absolutely critical, because we all know the truth will out. Anybody read a book called The Clue Train Manifesto? I'm showing my age here. It's about 20 years old. Anyway, it was basically all of it. Thank you. Thank God for that. One person. But basically, it was like 20 years ago, and it was all about the idea that actually people are more connected because of social media, often throughout the company sort of membrane, than we are internally. So it's easier to share stories to people who don't work at the company, and therefore you can't have this veneer of we're lovely on the outside, but inside it's all a bit rotten. It's got to be real, it's got to be transparent. And as I said, because we are an increasingly multicultural society, and because there is this demographic change, organisations who are behind the curve on this now need to catch up, because they will find it harder and harder and harder to attract the talent that they need to build strong organisations. Artificial intelligence, think again in what Mark showed at the beginning, we're all worried about the volume of applications we're getting, the sea of sameness. There's huge promises being made by the tech industry at the moment. You're going to be able to find candidates while you sleep, and we're going to be able to nurture them for you from cold right to warm application without you doing a thing. So there's some pretty big expectations from CFOs about how much money this is going to save. There's probably some big expectations from CTOs as well about, oh, great, I'm going to have some more software in my empire, and we're going to be able to shrink the recruitment team down. So, whether those cuts are happening right now, those challenges are coming. So, is AI going to be good or bad for recruitment? Yes, it's going to be good and bad for recruitment. It will be both. There will be challenges. It's already reshaping thought processes. It's already reshaping recruitment processes. And it is going to become an absolutely critical part of your tool set in that race to attract candidates to your organizations. So what should we do about that? Let AI speed up the process so you can slow down and connect with people. If you don't recognize this guy, Sven Elbert, who's senior analyst from Fossway, he is really smart, lovely German guy. Do go and follow him on LinkedIn. He knows what he's talking about. And his view is that AI should be a boost to productivity in recruitment and talent acquisition. It shouldn't replace recruiters. And the best use of AI will be where it takes that tedious admin, the tedious grunt work away, so that actually you can focus on those human connections. I go back to what I said earlier about it being a high purchase involvement. If candidates need to really trust us, I think that human connection is absolutely critical in the process in terms of how we attract candidates and how we bring them on. And so his message is very much about keeping humans at the center of the process, not letting technology overstep its mark. Has anybody heard of Indeed? Just checking. I'd be really worried if in this room you hadn't heard of Indeed. So clearly, number one globally, certainly number one in the UK. At Tribepad, we process about between 10 and 12 million job applications a year for our customers, and more than a third of them come from Indeed. So it's a really critical source for talent attraction. And Matt really knows his stuff about technology, about recruitment, about macroeconomics as well. And again, his view of this is that actually, as recruiters, we need to get in and start experimenting now and not wait for change, not necessarily wait for IT to roll out an approved system that's going to work. I should just say with real caution here, I'm absolutely not endorsing you go against your IT policies and install what you like on your laptop. But I think the thing here is to push on the door, demand change, demand innovation, and demand experimentation. Because if you're not doing it, your competitors and your rivals in the industry who are trying to attract the same talent are doing it already. So we're very much in an experimentation and learning phase, and it's going to be a race for those organizations who learn the fastest will get the best benefits out of AI. So finishing on the second topic here, really AI augments but doesn't replace. And I've added a bit of a yet in brackets there. I think we're kidding ourselves if this won't have some sort of impact and won't have job losses, particularly in recruitment. I think it will. We know that there are still people out there slogging to fight through a system and fighting with internal admin, and technology really should help us get rid of that tedious work and free up to do the value-add jobs that we all want to do. I spoke to a care organisation recently who, when they advertise a support worker role, they typically get 250 applications. They literally don't even look at about 150 of them. Literally don't look at them because they're too busy. Of the 100 they look at, they properly assess about 50 and they get back to those 50 to either shortlist them or reject them. And they really only get around to actually talking to about 25. So we're talking about a huge portion of the candidates who are applying are literally getting ghosted because the recruitment team is too busy. And from a future talent attraction, the impact on, what's that going to do next time? How likely is this person to reapply? It's a critical problem that, hopefully one that AI can address. And if we do it right with the right checks and balances in place, it could help build trust with candidates rather than erode it. Okay, quick advert about Tribepad because we have had to pay to be here, so I better say something about it. If you want a job at one of 200 of the UK's most awesome organisations, whether it's putting out sausage rolls for Greggs, forecasting the weather, or being a nurse in the NHS, you can use Tribepad. Advertise the job, screen candidates, conduct video interviews, offer contracts, do onboarding, integrate with all those cool assessment tools. I think we've got a couple of Tribepad customers in the room, so I haven't actually seen John yet from NHG, but I'm sure he's presenting later on. So if you're out there somewhere, John, hello, I can't see you. Anyway, right, that'll do. So, third topic, employer branding. If you get employer branding right, it's the most powerful recruiter in your organisation. And as I mentioned before, finding a job is increasingly a consumer-led process. It's like advertising. So having a strong, authentic employer brand can make or break your reputation. So I'd ask you to have a think about, who is telling your story at the moment? What's the story of your brand? What's out there on Glassdoor? What's out there on LinkedIn? And are you having adequate input into that story? Is it owned in another part of the organisation, or as talent acquisition professionals, have you got adequate say into what's going on there? And do you believe it from a transparency and authenticity point of view? Don't sit and wait for the right candidate. Start by building relationships and nurturing talent. So Hannah Foster, she's Chief People Officer in the NHS in Devon. Enormous organisation in terms of territory, thousands of staff, millions of customers in the NHS. And you'll all know that the NHS is one of the largest employers in the country. It's probably the most scrutinised as well in terms of we all interact with it, we all have an opinion on it. And so in an incredibly competitive market, getting your employer brand right from an NHS trust point of view is absolutely critical. And Hannah's key takeaway from how to get this right is all about understanding your people across not just the people in your organisation, but the people in competitive organisations where you're trying to attract from as well. Something they put in place in NHS Devon was called the People Promise. And this was all about the employer value proposition of well-being and inclusion and constant learning. People often join the NHS because they have a desire to help and they want a desire to progress. And so making sure that people promise isn't just a campaign, it's sort of a cultural blueprint that you stay true to is absolutely critical, because we all know the power of referral. And if the promises on the website say one thing, but actually your friends who work in the organisation say another, the trust and the transparency erodes again. Completely different organisation. This is Jennifer Lawrence from Card Factory, but very similar thought process is when people trust your culture, they're more likely to join and stay. Now, Card Factory has a really young demographic, in its, particularly in its stores, less so than its head office. And Jen believes this is really linked to their purpose and just how upfront they are about inclusion and the purpose of the organisation, what they're trying to do, essentially bringing joy to people's lives with gifts and cards. The whole business is about making people feel good, and that is true sort of front to back throughout the recruitment process, throughout the employee life cycle, their company values and everything they do. And so Jennifer's take was that by having really clear brand purpose that resonates emotionally, the recruitment almost becomes a magnetism experience. You're positively attracting people into the organisation. So I definitely recommend going and watching this episode. Jennifer's also got quite an interesting job title. I've never seen anybody else with a Chief People and Transformation job title before. So it's a recognition of just how human-centric their organisation is. In terms of driving any kind of change, they start with the people. And that's why she's in charge of that. So really interesting lady, really knows her stuff. So if I was to conclude on that third point, pay, perks, policies often look the same across different organisations, or very similar. So it's really how you articulate your brand values. Candidates aren't just choosing jobs, they're choosing values, they're choosing a life, they're choosing something to buy into and commit to for years. So it's really, really important. The final topic then I want to touch on is ditching the CV for a better candidate experience. So once you've attracted all of this talent, how do you assess the talent in a way that's fair and efficient and doesn't result in you drowning in a sea of sameness of 500 AI-generated CVs? Quick show of hands, please. Who is already hiring, or at least experimenting, with a CV hiring process? Sorry, CV-free hiring process. Okay, 1, 2... A smattering. Yeah, so the CV is an incredibly stubbornly persistent document that we probably all know is crap. Hiring managers love them, and it seems to be really hard to move away from it. Across our Tribepad customers, we have about 30 million candidates in the platform. Fewer than 5% of jobs don't ask for a CV, i.e. 95% of the time we're still asking for a CV. It's really strange how wedded we are to this. So again, perhaps one to touch on the round tables or on the coffee break is, okay, if the CV was wiped from the planet tomorrow, what would you do? Interesting thought. So the last two people I want to introduce you to have got some really, really clear thoughts on this. So firstly, Estelle McCartney, who's CEO of Arctic Shores. You might have heard of them. They're an assessment company, but with some really, really clear values about basically how bad the CV is. And her take on this is that, you know, we're stuck trying to predict the future with a document that only tells us about the past. I think Leonardo da Vinci famously lied on his CV. There's all sorts of surveys out there that tell you that something like 70% of people admit to lying on their CV, which means that the other 30% just haven't admitted to lying because they're liars. So I think it's really crucial that we try and redesign recruitment. We know this document isn't representative. If I go back to the nursing organisation I was talking about earlier, when they're looking to hire somebody, it's quite often about motivation. So, for example, somebody might say, well, actually, the reason I want to be a nurse is my sister has autism, and I've gone through all these challenges in my family, and I looked after my mum when she was elderly, and that's my motivation, and that's why I want to join your organisation. That's not written on the CV. Nobody writes that on their CV. So what are you missing by looking at the CV? So Arctic Shores is very much, they're part of the Tribepad ecosystem and increasingly popular as companies are looking for a better way of assessing candidates that doesn't involve reading 250 AI-generated CVs that all look the bloody same and don't tell you anything useful about the candidates. So challenge yourselves and challenge your organisations to think, how can I start experimenting with this? You know, perhaps just one or two hiring managers who are forward-thinking, perhaps one or two difficult jobs where we're really challenging it. We're not looking to change the whole process overnight. As I say, we know 95% of jobs are still using them. That's a big change needed. Start in some small pockets. Start experimenting with this stuff. You will be surprised how good the results are. And the final person I want to represent today, and I'm conscious I haven't gone through all the 20 different people I've talked to, and there's 45 minutes of chat with each, so it's very much just a couple of highlights. Andrew here is one of the founders of an organisation called Willow. If you haven't heard of Willow, they're a video interviewing platform, but increasingly branching out into all kinds of other assessments. Both of the founders are neurodiverse. Both of the founders are from recruitment. Both of them know how rubbish CVs are. So they built a company determined to drive a better, fairer, faster recruitment process, which nicely ties in with our strapline at Tribepad, making recruitment fairer, faster and better, which is why we've partnered with Willow. And again, his focus is that it should be about making a human connection. The recruiter process and talent attraction should be about getting to the people behind the CV and therefore asking relevant work-related questions, having relevant job-specific assessments where you can actually test somebody's skills, their behaviours, and you can sift down much faster so that you can spend more time in the interview stage and less time on the screening stage. So you can get to that great talent faster. And their platform is growing really, really fast. We have still only about 3% of the jobs through our platform use video interviewing, but it's doubling year on year. I think the economists would call that an exponential growth curve. So I'm optimistic that at some point in the future we'll see the death of the CV, but I'm very aware that people have predicted the death of the CV for about the last 10 years. So I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that 2025 is the year the CV dies, because I don't think it is. So, yeah, I mean, look, I'm sure you are drowning in this sea of sameness where you have a huge number of applications coming through. Customers tell us that they think somewhere between 60 and 70% of CVs they see are now AI generated, so pretty meaningless. So there is definitely a way to move forwards from this ineffective document that's actually just causing a whole load of tedious admin for everybody, including the candidates who are putting together these documents thinking, why the hell am I writing this? So I really think it's time to move on. Okay. Before I move on to my final question, I just want to ask you one favour. Would you put your hand up if you listen to podcasts? Okay, keep your hands up for a second. Thank you. Right, you'll see me on LinkedIn later posting that, saying these are all the people who thought my talk was amazing. Anyway, if you've ever been tempted to record a podcast, I'll go back to what my son said at the start. Why the hell would you want to do that? Actually, it's really fun. So if you're invited to be a guest on a podcast or you're interested, challenge yourself, do it. It's really fun because it's basically just chatting. It's just basically having a laugh. And you can't be as bad at it as I am. So I'll click play on this, and if this doesn't give you the confidence to go and have a go, then I can't help you further. Hi, my name's Neil Armstrong, and this is The View, where people, hiring and culture comes... No, it's not. This is a introduction. Let me try this again. The globe, recruitment, and... Jesus, start again. So tune in and... this right up. That right up. Prison and then mental oh my God. Poverty, violence. I'm chatting with Matt Burney, who's a strategic Start again. Welcome to The View from Tribepad. Start again. No, I do not want to take notes with Gemini. Go away. Helping that right up. There you go. And this is why you don't need thousands of pounds at the minute. I love it. Oh, please keep that in. Let's carry on. Let's try that again. If you want to find out when the next episode of The View is coming, please subscribe on our website, and you can that up. Do the outro again. Right. Anyway, I thought that'd be a little bit of fun. Do come and visit James and I outside. If you like eco stuff, we've got some really cool little desk plants that you can grow next to your monitor. We also know quite a lot about talent attraction and talent acquisition. So apart from just the plant, do come and chat to us outside. If you've got any questions, if we've got time, James, I'm very happy to take... Sorry, not James. I've just looked at James. That's why I did that. Sorry, Mark. That's it. Sorry, I'll shut up now.